Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 2 or 3, depending on when you got here. If it's day 3, you're probably a little tireder than if it was day 2. Got a couple of announcements. Thanks to Red Hat for the food and beer last night. I know food and beer is important. It is to me. So thanks to Red Hat. I don't think I really need to say this, but somebody told me I had to say this. Remember, use the hashtag ZenCon on your tweets. We're getting tons of tweets, so clearly you guys must understand that. The Uncon. How many people have been to an Uncon session? Can I see a show of hands? In general, the feedback that I've heard is the Uncon sessions were great. And what we're looking for is a little bit more participation. So if you have an idea for an Uncon session, again, Uncons are sort of ad hoc little sessions. You can probably present about almost anything you'd like. Make up a few slides, sign up for a session in front of reception. Any topic you want to cover. People will show up, you'll entertain them for a few minutes, or not, and that'll be another Uncon session for us. Green elephants. Hey, it's all slides today, so there's really not much chance that something's going to come flying out of the audience to save us, but you never know. PowerPoint might have a problem. So in any case, if you haven't filled out your elephant hunt things and gotten your green elephant, you got like basically today to do it, so make sure you get your elephant hunt done. All of this stuff where we try to bribe you with cloth. Remember, fill out your conference evaluation forms. At the end of the day, you get your lovely, lovely t-shirt. Somebody also said that I should take responsibility for the fact that they played the Ghostbusters theme yesterday. Yeah, I apologize for that. I didn't really pick that one, but hey, sometimes you get what you get. Last lunch today is going to be sponsored by New Relic. So again, they're not responsible for the food. They just pay for it, okay? So same thing as yesterday. One last technological note. Our QA overlord, Gotti, asked me to tell everybody that the Zen Server 6 beta does not install over top of Zen Server 5 as an upgrade. If you try to do that, it's not going to work. When we go to GA, we'll fix that problem. But for beta now, either uninstall 5.6 before you install 6. Don't try to do an upgrade. It's just going to make your life miserable. Sorry about that. We probably should have told you up front. I don't know. I could say my bad, but since nobody told me, I'm not going to take responsibility for that. Oh, his bad. Guy's bad right there. He's the guy responsible. The second guy in from Andy, pummel him later. All right, so today we're going to have a couple of speakers talking about a topic I think you'll find pretty interesting. These are both media companies. Andy mentioned them yesterday in his keynote. They've basically moved to PHP from other languages, and we're going to talk a little bit about how the media industry is changing and what drove that change. And so first up is Brent Pearson. He's the CTO of UBM Tech. And so Brent, I'll ask you to come up onto the stage here, and Brent will present for a few minutes. Then we'll switch to another presenter, and at the end we'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A if you have questions. So thank you very much. So without further ado, Brent. Clicker. Thank you. Check. Yeah.
Who do I throw it at? All right. All right. Good morning. There we go. Just takes the elephant. So, morning. So my name is Brent Pearson, and I'm here to talk about some of the work we've done at my company over the past few years. The company is UBM, and first I'd like to thank the organizers of ZenCon for having me here. And I'd like to thank everybody here getting up this early to listen. I know this is pretty early for a lot of developers. I know I would have preferred a 9:30 start myself, but here we are, so thank you for being here. I don't have a lead-in joke. Sorry, I couldn't think of a good one. So I'm just going to have to jump right in. Sorry. What I want to talk about is how we're using, is this going to go? There we go. I want to talk about how we're using PHP and Zend to solve some of our business problems. I want to start with some of the background about our company, some of our products, and then I want to talk about where we were technologically 3 to 4 years ago. And from there, we committed to PHP. So after that, I want to do a bit of a deep dive into some of the ways we're using Zend and PHP specifically. And then hopefully I can pull it all together and underscore the main topic I was asked to address, which is how we're using PHP to navigate through some of the changes in the media industry. So for me personally, I've been here, UBM, about 3.5 years. I've been in the Bay Area going on 13 years, always in technology, software related. So first, UBM. Maybe? Not quite. There we go. So UBM, it's a global live media company. So it does B2B communications, marketing services, and data. What we do is we help organizations make connections, communicate their propositions, and do business effectively. And we enable professionals around the world to connect and engage with each other. And we do this by whatever means works best. Do it with live events like this, do it with digital media. We also still have a pretty big print publication network. There's about 15 divisions within UBM, and I work with the division that covers the technology sector, and aptly named UBM Tech. So how do we connect? All right, so how do we connect organizations with professionals? So we look at our business from 2 different sides. On the one side, we have our professionals we're delivering information to. Instead, we host large conferences, very similar to what you guys are seeing here. We provide training, provide research data and analysis, and we do a lot of print, although that is quickly shrinking. So, and then on the other side, we have the companies that have the products and services they would like to present to the professionals we're delivering our information to. So we help these companies get their message across through event sponsorship, digital print media solutions, community development, lead generation, and then also custom content. So here are some of the brands that we have that you might be familiar with. Dr. Dobbs. Dr. Dobbs' journal started in the mid-70s around microcontrollers. It really started out as just a small journal dedicated to software. And now it really is going for folks like the developers here, earning your bread and butter on software development. Also gets into some hardware and hardware-related subjects. InformationWeek, this is our flagship brand over at UBM Tech. Also gets the most traffic. It's for the IT professional, targets the executive level, covers enterprise IT across the board. Also, very large print distribution. Network computing. Another IT brand. I'm just going to start flipping through some of these slides because I don't need to get into all of our brands. But what you'll see is that we cover a broad range of topics, and there's a lot of specific brands for each specific topic. And then what I'll get to at the end is why that's becoming less and less important, although we do need to maintain the brands. So network computing does just what it says. Brainyard, this is an interesting, it gets into issues focused on social media and collaboration. So it covers everything from video conferencing to social media for technical support. Light reading, this is it's a research-led division that we have. Interesting, it's still classic ASP. I think we built it 10 to 12 years ago. It hasn't changed much, but right now we're currently moving it over to the Zend platform. So spreading out from specific IT, but still related to technology, we also have Gama Sutra. It's a game developers product. The game group within UBM Tech, they have Gama Sutra. gamedeveloper.com. I also run GDC, Game Developers Conference. So Game Developer Conference is pretty similar to what you would find here. It's a little bit bigger. It's up in the Moscone Center, the main one, up in San Francisco. Crowd might be a little bit more alternative, but not too dissimilar. For an even more alternative crowd, just go to Black Hat. Black Hat is sort of the de facto security summit. If you haven't been and you're interested in security at all, recommend this show. Very, very good show. So, and then the last slide I'll do on all of our brands sort of brings it back. This is also a show. It's about more enterprise IT. Not a boring show at all, especially if you're into hardware. Okay, so those are our brands. We are about 300 websites, 600 million annual page views. Of that, about 2/3 of that is PHP and Zend. Both 2/3 of the websites, about 200 websites, about 400 million page views on Zend. The other third is everything, Java, .NET, whatever we felt like experimenting with a few years ago. You name it, we probably have it running on a server. So our typical high traffic sites, we're seeing 10 to 50K page views in an hour. Other sites are seeing that in a day, and then if we get a couple of stories on Google News, we can spike up to 10x that. What you're seeing here is a chart of traffic from the first week of September. So a couple of interesting things here is on this Thursday, the 7th of September, it's when Apple announced the iPhone 5. It's not when they released it, but when they announced it. By the time they actually released it, our traffic didn't do anything like this. So there was a lot more hype around the announcement, and then it sort of fizzled out as the month went by. But for us, what's more important here is that we didn't even notice this. We were all just coding away, doing our thing. Servers shot off. Nothing happened. Just smooth sailing. Servers hummed along. Traffic came down. We got our reports in from Omniture and said, oh my God, amazing traffic. Sites didn't slow down. So for us, that's a huge, huge win, right? Our traffic, sort of we live and die sometimes by Google News. We can get a story on Google News, get a flood of traffic. On our old system, that would pretty much bring us down, right? A spike like this, best case scenario, would have delayed our page load times to 30 to 45 seconds. Worst case scenario, everything goes kaput. We're all in the same server farm, start rebooting servers. You have 400 sites going out. Not quite that bad, but it felt that bad. So the old technology, Java-based. Team site, probably a lot of you know that, sort of a behemoth document management CMS. We're on ATG Dynamo. So I don't know if anybody's had the pleasure of working with ATG Dynamo. And I say pleasure, very tongue-in-cheek. We had 2 people full-time that would just go through the server logs, look for errors, and fix it. If we tried to take that down to 1 person, we couldn't keep up with the errors, and eventually we'd start throwing errors, and servers would start crashing. So no fun. I don't want to keep going into war stories on that, but fun to talk about maybe over a beer. And so Oracle database, we still use Oracle. And at the time, we had lots and lots and lots and lots of physical servers. So when things would come down and we had to reboot servers, it was a lot of work. So just get my bearings here. All right. So long story short, we made a decision to move to PHP. Pretty much one reason for that. Developers. It's the only picture I have in my deck. Not big on pictures, I guess. But it's developers. Really made the difference in Java, from Java to PHP. We could find some good Java developers. They wanted a lot of money, and they weren't that easy to find. For PHP, we could find a lot of good developers, and they could learn PHP. So it was almost a no-brainer. ATG was end of life. It was killing us. We needed a solution. PHP it was. With PHP, we wanted a platform. We wanted something to get us up to speed fast. okay? 3.5 years ago, there wasn't too much competition for Zend. We made the choice very quickly. It was an easy choice to make. So what I want to do now is just talk about some of the ways we're using Zend, what works. Actually, I hope it's OK. I'm going to go into some of the things that haven't worked quite that well and how we've gotten around that. And then I want to talk, if I have time, talk a little bit about our infrastructure that we use. So our favorite thing about Zend is the Eclipse plugin. Can't say enough about it. Really like it. Enjoy using it. From that, being able to integrate into our servers from Zend Studio, and then troubleshoot the request, bring a log file back local, saved us a lot of time, a lot of money, and helped us solve some really complicated problems. So things that we haven't kept out of the box. The optimizer. We don't know why, but we switched to APC and we got a pretty significant increase. We worked with some Zend folks on it. We just didn't really have the time, frankly, to figure out why APC worked better than optimizer. We just made the switch, we got the improvement, kind of moved on. The other thing that we're looking to improve on our side is the page cache. In our ideal scenario, we're caching different elements of the page with different TTLs. With the page cache, what we do is we have to go to the lowest common denominator. Not optimal for us. So we still do utilize it, but we're looking for some more granular solutions. So the way we do our cache, this is probably not very dissimilar from the way a lot of shops do it, is we have 3 levels. We have the Zend page cache. It sits on the front end, caches the entire HTML output. We bring that time to live down pretty low so that we can refresh our content. We have editors writing content all day long. We can configure it so that certain sections of the site refresh. We can go by URLs. We have to get a special plugin with an API to do a single page. So a lot of work around that. We're probably just looking to get rid of that completely. So memcache, we use the distributed cache primarily for anything that sits across all of our servers, right? API calls, mostly configs. We don't want to have to load that up into each server. So we've introduced the distributed cache. It sits there. We have 2 servers running that. And then the core strategy for our caching is the APC cache, right? I'm going to just jump to that in a second, talk more. But so we got a 5x speed up. And by speed up, what this meant, speed up might not be the best word. We got a 5x improvement. And we measured improvement by page loads, right? So we did a stress test, took 1 server out of the rotation, hammered it as hard as we could. Optimizer Plus, this many page requests before the response time was over 5 seconds. Flipped it to APC. We got 5x the number of page requests. Pretty good. So I'm going to jump into opcode caching. This might be a little rudimentary for some folks, but it sort of underscores the point of how important the non-page level cache is for us. So at the opcode level, any piece of code within our PHP framework, within our platform, we can stick into the cache and we can add a specific TTL for it. So the typical, on the left, the typical PHP, standard site out of the box, comes in, get a request, does the compilation steps, does the execution, and spits out a request. Spits out a response, pardon. With APC, every single piece of our code we can stick in the cache. Request comes in, code checks to see if it needs something from the cache, looks in the cache. If it has it, automatically kicks it out. A bunch of these pieces doing this on 1 page. If it's not in the cache, it goes through the compilation steps and then kicks it out. So sorry for the busy slide, but it will make sense here in a second. How am I doing on time? 5 minutes left. 10 minutes left. OK. So what I'll do is I'll just talk about the top 2 boxes, not the F5, but the 2 boxes, the big boxes up top, are all our Zend servers. So what we did is we broke it up into a primary pool and a secondary pool. Primary pool, 6 Zend servers, the framework turned on, with page caching turned on, and we're running it fairly straight, and we're handling it, we're managing it with the Zend cluster manager. We created a secondary pool. Secondary pool, we turned off page caching. We basically bypassed the framework, and we use this for any real-time JavaScript AJAX calls. Right, so if we load the page and then we have to call in to update the page, update the user, get the user information, at the F5 level, we basically say anything that's a .js or it's an AJAX call, go to the secondary pool. Had a pretty significant improvement out of that, just by separating the two. Box on the right, we have a distributed cache. Both pools are pointing at the mem cache. And we are still using TeamSite for our content. We're looking at other solutions for that. We have a dedicated team, runs TeamSite. We still have some Java developers. But we don't consume it directly. What we do is we've just put a service layer in front of that. The CDS, we call it, it's Content Delivery System. It's just a homegrown service layer. Still use Oracle, but we don't use Oracle from Zend. Everything's a service call. And there's a couple of exceptions to that, but primarily everything is a service call that ends up in Oracle. And we have a whole nother system. We call it NextGen. That's our audience, our user management, and that's all Java-based as well. So we're not completely Zend, but the front end for sure, web services, websites, they are. Some of our core back-end infrastructure, we still have some legacy hooks into it. A sec. Just want to make sure I cover everything here. OK, so I'll get off that busy slide and just get a little bit into the configuration. Some of this I already said, the Zend Cluster Manager. We're managing our servers. Basically, the reason anybody would use it. Makes it easier to manage and update the servers. Another thing we did on our, on our configuration is we reduced our PHP extensions. So out of the box, there's about 30 extensions, roughly, give or take. We were able to shut off 12 of these extensions. We got a 20 to 30 meg memory increase in our Apache. Not huge. Memory is kind of cheap now, but if you're looking to optimize it, it's definitely something you can look at. Garbage collector, another thing. Out of the box, it is, I don't have my notes here. But essentially what we did was we said, be a lot more aggressive about cleaning up memory. Again, got a little bit of an optimization there. The PHP code optimization, using the code tracer, this was fantastic for us. We're able to go through, set some breakpoints, and look at all the different code. What we found was pretty silly. Our config files were taking of all the code we did, everything we did on every request, loading the config was the thing that took the longest. 20 meg config file. Ridiculous. Took it out of the file, put it in the database, cached it, no longer an issue at all. The other thing we found is that we weren't logging our API calls correctly. In some cases, we were logging too much, getting way too much data that we didn't need, using excess cycles. In other cases, we weren't logging enough. We'd throw an error, we'd kick out a log file or a log entry, and we still didn't know what the problem was. So the code tracer helped us with that a lot. So I could go on the PHP, the technical specs, but I'm probably not the best person to do that. We have some pretty hardcore developers at UBM Tech who would love to talk to anybody. We're right up the road. We're in San Francisco, south of Market. Happy to talk shop. Feel free to stop by sometime. We can dig into this. So what I want to do before I run out of time here is sort of flip back to the media bit. Right? So what is changing in the media industry is that the brand is less important. you know, I intentionally went through 7 or 8 brands earlier to make this point is that I don't want to say I don't care, but I don't care. As long as I can get the information about what the problem is I'm trying to solve, it's got to be a reputable site. There's a certain level where it matters. But if I get it on Dr. Dobbs or I get it on network computing or I go to InformationWeek and it can solve my problem, I don't have an affinity to any of those, right? So what we're finding is that we want users to access all of that. We have a really single-minded approach of the user, right? And the other bit in the media, our single-minded approach for what we want the user to do is we want them to register, right? There's an exchange of value between a user and a company that's trying to present that user with a product or a service. So what we've done is we've extracted that user from the site. We've created an SSO setup, and we've created a common taxonomy across all of our brands. So through that, you can be on Dr. Dobbs' journal, and I can serve up, based on the taxonomy, an article I think is interesting to you that's over on InformationWeek. So this single thing has helped look at our brands from a holistic view. And with that, that's where it gets really interesting, right? So we have these things we've implemented. They're called smart boxes. Smart boxes have added the extra click to our site immensely. Incredible pickup. And all we're trying to do is to get the user that's reading an article to click one more time into a tech paper, into a white paper, maybe attend a webinar. Doesn't matter what brand it is, right? So what we can do is we put up a smart box. It's got our taxonomy, knows what the article is you're looking at, knows what else we have in our arsenal of content, tries to serve up the best match. Good example. Let's say that ZendCon. They come to UBM Tech and they say, hey, we want to get more people to attend ZendCon. Say, well, okay, great. Why don't you give me some of your sessions? We'll tag it against our taxonomy. And the next time we have a developer who's on Dr. Dobbs' journal looking at a PHP solution, we can say, hey, this session at ZendCon, this specific session, you should attend. Right up next to it. So that's what flipping to PHP, being able to do some rapid development, being smarter about how we deploy things and getting away from brand and having every site be independent. That's been the biggest change for us. And the next step on that is just to add a behavior dimension. So what that is instead of just looking at the content and the taxonomy, I look at the taxonomy of everything you've looked at and your history we have with you. This is why getting somebody to register for one of our sites is so important. Not only is there a value exchange with the advertiser, but for us to get all the behavior, to get the metrics, that just automatically increases our ability to serve the right content and create a better connection between a buyer and a seller. So I think, you know, in closing, I'll just kind of recap where we came from. You know, terrible legacy behemoth systems, flip to PHP. Developers were by far our principal motivator on that. What we've come is we've been able to adapt, look at things differently, create an underlying platform that allows us to just make progress. We don't have people sitting around looking at log files anymore. People that are actually developing. I don't know about you, but I would much rather develop than sit around and look through log files. So, thank you. I'll be back for some questions. Thanks. That's all right.
Oh, sure, now it works. Just as I'm getting ready to swap out the clicker, it's working now. Are you cursed? Good mojo. Well, apparently not with clickers. Now I'd like to introduce Raghu Bala. He's the CTO of Source Interlink Media. They've gone through a similar transition to PHP, and I think he'll talk to you about what they've seen in their experiences. Raghu?
Good morning. So I'm Raghu Bala of Source Interlink Media. We are an enthusiast media company, and we are nationwide. We have got 23 offices nationwide. The division that I represent works out of Southern California. We've got about 110 million page views, 32 million unique visitors. We actually have over 200 websites, and 86 of them are branded websites, and then a bunch of what we call lead generation websites and so on. So whenever I tell people I'm from Source Interlink Media, nobody seems to know about this company. It's kind of quiet, but you would have heard about our brands. And if you're in the auto space, if you're an auto enthusiast, you would have heard about us. Motor Trend is our biggest brand. Hot Rod, Automobile, and so on. And also in the action sports arena, we've got Surfer, Powder, and motorbikes, and so on. So everything to do with enthusiast, outdoor, lifestyle type brand. In addition to the magazines, we have digital websites. And in the last couple of years, we have launched a number of apps, Google TV, different types of platforms, apps, tablets, Google TV channels, and so on. Now, yesterday, actually, we were mentioned at the iPad mini launch. Surfer happens to be one of our brands and happens to be coded in PHP, actually. So what I'm going to talk about today is actually how we transitioned from where we were in 2006 when I joined Source Interlink from Yahoo. And the strategy of the company has changed over time. And I think that's, from what I heard from Brent, actually from his presentation, a lot of similarities between media companies, I think. We're all going through kind of a transitional phase, a lot of things happening. So, when I mention strategy, especially for developers, I was a developer myself, so people start laughing. And to be honest, we didn't do anything illegal. The furthest we went was play around with SEO a little bit. So still white hat SEO, not black hat. But, and what's happened in the media industry is very interesting, which is what used to be a business of long tail, and a lot of marketing people talking about long tail back then. And the idea was to drive traffic to your websites by launching a lot of sites and catching all of the little bit of traffic that you can get, and then kind of pooling all your revenues and advertising revenues and leads and so on from those long tail. And that, as a strategy, has changed quite a bit in the last, I would say, 5-6 years. Especially in the last year, it has changed a lot, because a lot of this long tail was driven by people coming in through search engines and so on. Google, for example, has changed its algorithm for search engines through Google Panda and Penguin and so on. And that's impacted a lot of media companies, and us included. And what we have seen, I'll show later on what's happened as a result. And our main revenue generators were ads and leads. Actually, initially, we were a lead gen company in the auto space. And lead gen, for those who don't know, basically you collect information about people interested in buying cars, and then you sell the information to either dealers or to car manufacturers and other aggregators and so on. And that was our initial business. And then we brought in all the branded sites like Motor Trend and Hot Rod and so on and so forth, and started generating a lot of revenues. A couple of ways: CPM-based ads, as well as AdSense and so on. At that time, our stack, and even to this year, our stack has always been a kind of a hybrid stack. And if I just went back to the previous slide for a second, the thing here was that at that time, a couple of guys were running the division, and they were two startup guys. Actually, Source Interlink, prior to SourceLink coming. The company was actually Prime Media at that time, and then SourceLink bought a division of Prime Media. So two guys were running this division, which is now the division that I run. And they were two startup guys. And so when I came in, I asked them, what do you want to do with this business? Do you want to build the best technology? Do you want to make more money? What do you want to do? Because these guys had an exit clause in their, they had just sold their company to a bigger conglomerate, a public company. And they said, you know what? I really don't care about technology. Just make me as much money as you can, and I want to exit. And they had a 2-year exit clause, a buyout. And just a little bit of background. I've been a CTO many times over, and actually about 10 years ago, I was at a company. I'd sold my startup to a company in the East Coast. And at that time, I was faced with a similar situation. I learned from this mistake, where I went into this startup, and and as most technologists, I said, okay, you know what, I'm going to build the best damn platform that I can build and take this company to the next level. But one of the questions I forgot to ask was, what's the strategy of the company? And that's why the strategy business, while technologists might roll their eyes, actually kind of important. You have to kind of align what you do with where the company is headed. So at that time, I built the platform, but the company actually wanted to get sold. So this company that I went into, sold my startup to, got rolled into InfoSpace within 9 months. So, the time that I took to build the platform was a waste. And so this time around, I didn't want to make the same mistake. So, so I asked these two entrepreneurs, what do you want to do? And they said, we just care about profits, and we want to just go as fast as possible. So at that time, what I said was, okay, let's not spend too much time diddling around with technology. Let's just use what we have, use the people we have, use the technology we have, and try to go forward as fast as possible. So what we did is over the next 2 years, we grew our business by, I'd say, threefold, $20 million revenue to about $60 million revenue, very, very quickly. And it's a mixture of a number of things. And we built up a number of technologies, and we built our own framework on the existing technology, which was .NET primarily for the branded sites, and then PHP for some of the lead gen sites. And like many media companies, we had a content management system, we had a classified system, blogs, and also kind of a lead gen a platform. And in terms of other services like BI and so on, it was basically data warehouse on Microsoft SQL Server technologies and so on and so forth. And the platform architecture looked somewhat like this, very, 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 very high level. This is not even 100,000 feet, maybe 1 million feet. And so you had a kind of a publishing tier. You had leads and classifieds. And then you had a JMS queue connected to a middle tier Java layer, which there were many services. I just put one service out there, which was the content service. And then off to the web layer, which is primarily .NET. And there's some caching in between and using a SOAP API. And logging was through Log4j and Log4net and MySQL on the side for some, say, a non-persistent store and things like that. So pretty standard, simple architecture. I wouldn't say simple. It had multiple layers, but it served the purpose, and it was pretty much what they had when I got there. So just building upon what we already had. The only thing that we did was build a kind of a framework on the web tier. So this architecture sort of like, we kind of ran it for about 5 years. And almost 6 years. But one of the problems in technology is budget and opportunity to change things around. You don't get that very often. And so the last 2 years, actually, our management has changed quite a bit, and we've got more aggressive leadership. And they gave us the opportunity and the budgets and the time to make changes. And also, the business strategy itself has changed quite a bit. So the long tail that I spoke about no longer sort of exists. It's almost like the fat part of the curve right now. This part is almost dead. So you're dealing with this, and our focus is on the large branded sites. And the 200 websites that we have, in fact, 86 of the brands, a lot of the brand sites, the magazines on print still exist, but for example, we've got like, 5 truck magazines and 5 truck sites. And instead of using 5 truck sites, we're kind of grouping them into one big Uber truck site, for example, or a Uber motorcycle site and things of that nature. So that's the plan going forward, where we're kind of concentrating our traffic into these fatter, thicker sites with more content and so on. And similar to what Brent had mentioned, we are also going through single sign-on, building a network among our sites as opposed to viewing them as silos, and using Jan for single sign-on, and then Live Fire for live commenting, and so on and so forth. And the other thing that happened in the last couple of years is, as you all have witnessed, not all traffic on web, what used to be called digital in the, funny subplot here, because before I came into the media business, I was in other companies, Yahoo and so on and so forth, and prior to that, InfoSpace and so on. And I never considered this word digital. When I came to media business, people said digital. I said, what are you talking about? And in the media world, digital means anything but print. So anything but print has gone from being web. Web used to be digital, and digital no longer means web. Digital is now mobile, tablet, iMags, apps, connected TV, and even in our world, we are actually adding one more bullet called telematics, which is in-car computing, because we're in the car space. So this whole concept of digital has sort of changed. And we have also embarked on a few other types of strategies. One is platform as a service, that is offering our own platform as a service to other media companies. And there are already some media companies using certain services that we offer in the form of RESTful APIs and other types of services to kind of help them operate their business. So if you look at the media space, there are about, in America, there are about 500 media companies, and I know at least more than that actually, about 1,000. And about 500 of them are between $10 million and $100 million revenue. So we are about over $1 billion, $1.5 billion media company. So we have a number of things that we can scale and do things that is, at a kind of economies of scale level that a lot of these smaller media companies can't afford to do. Whether it be cloud computing, emerging media, connected TV, apps, all of these SEO, ad operations, and so on and so forth. So many of these services, smaller media companies tend to kind of ignore, yet their constituents, their customers want those services. So they sort of run it through us, and that's one of the businesses that we have gotten into. Apart from that, we're also doing some overseas acquisitions and growing outside America to kind of like diversify our base. But in the same types of things, we bought a company, media company in India, just for the auto space, equivalent of some of our brands locally. So our business itself has changed. And so in order to cope with this change, we have had to modify the way we operate technologically. Our technical substrate has changed. And in the last 5 years, if you have noticed, a couple of other changes have happened. First of all, I think about 40% of all internet traffic goes through mobile sites. That's just a fact. Second of all, that's because your 3G, 4G, all of your mobile bandwidth has gone through the roof. That makes it more possible for people to use sites over mobile devices, right? These are just things that have happened. And the third thing is cloud computing is now a reality. So you can actually scale up and down easily, throttle up and down easily on the cloud, which, my ops guy, my director of ops, I've been talking to him for the last 2 years. I said, let's not spend more on hardware. Buying hardware, you're in the auto business. So if you look at it, I always tell him the next worst thing to buying a car and driving it off the lot and seeing depreciate is putting down the phone from your Dell service rep, because your hardware depreciates the moment you put down the phone. It's that bad. So why do you want to invest in some depreciating asset? Why not just go to the cloud? And when you have those spikes, someone talks about a brand on Yahoo or Google or some portal, it spikes up and down. You're preparing your hardware for the worst case scenario, not for the average scenario where you've got a lot of capacity that's empty. So cloud computing actually makes sense because you only pay for what you need to use. So all of those things have been going on in the last 5 years that we now have a kind of a new look at things. And we have made a lot of changes in the last year. First of all, we had actually a lot of PHP sites previously there were the lead gen sites, but most of the branded sites were on .NET. So now they're primarily on, we are moving towards we are much earlier in the evolution than Brent's company, but we are moving towards Zend. We selected Zend as a framework and PHP as a language. And there are a number of reasons for this that I'll cover in a second. And then middle tier is Java. And then we also introduced one other thing that happened I forgot to mention is NoSQL. NoSQL has become very, very popular. And there are good reasons for it, because trying to force everything down into a relational database model just doesn't make sense sometimes. So we have started to embrace a lot of NoSQL in our shop. And also, we had PostgreSQL, but it's becoming more and more prevalent in replacing SQL Server, because if you have noticed, the licensing costs of these technologies is sky high. Right now, SQL Server is being licensed at a per core, forget about per CPU, per core level, $5,000 per core, and that's extremely high. So just total cost of business, we want to drive it down, obviously. In terms of services, like what used to be called business intelligence or data warehousing, now big data. The big data is only possible when you have scalable infrastructure, throttleable hardware, things of that nature, using MapReduce and stuff like that. So we are doing all of those things in addition. Okay. See. So single sign-on, I mentioned that we also are doing that. So we are beginning to view our world as a network of sites. A user comes in, whether it comes into MotorTrend or Hot Rod or any of these sites, they can still go to the other sites. We keep a profile of them. We are trying to create a 360 view of the customer using our big data infrastructure. New platform, again, another 1 million feet diagram. Looks somewhat similar, but we have introduced a ESB, a kind of a bus, put a Zend on the front end, different type of logging mechanism, higher speed, more throughput using Redis and Node.js, and RESTful API. SOAP is toast right now. So we have made a number of changes in our infrastructure. So transition to PHP in the cloud, obviously, like I said, one is cost of ownership with the whole, us embracing open source and NoSQL and big data and so on, and cloud computing. A couple of things that actually turned us towards PHP, not only the fact that we already had a kind of a set of PHP developers. We wanted to grow that. We were familiar with the technology. Then when it came to selecting the, framework, actually I threw it open to our developers and I said, okay, you guys pick, because ultimately I didn't want the kind of decision to be driven top down for me to say, okay, use this or use that. So when I threw it open to them and I gave them a time frame, it was about a couple of months, and then what I got back from them was, okay, we want to standardize on Zend. And so we said, okay, if you want to standardize on Zend, support you fully, here's the budget, let's go. And we also compared a number of other frameworks during that period. Also, in terms of developers, we have developers onshore as well as offshore. And one of the things that was brought up earlier was that we can draw upon a pool of developers. The funny thing about technology is that I've lived in almost all 4 corners of America, And depending on where you live, you get a different set of developers. So I lived in Seattle for a while when I was with InfoSpace. And actually, Seattle itself is very funny. If you live on the side of Lake Washington, which is closer to Amazon, you find enough PHP developers. If you live on the side, which is Redmond, Kirkland, and Bellevue, which is the Microsoft side of the Seattle, almost find no one. So, and if you go to the East Coast, in certain areas, they're all full of IBMers. And then if you live in certain regions, you'll only find developers with a certain kind of ilk or mentality. So where we are in Southern California, I actually went out to dinner with 6 of my recruiters to say, you know what, if I'm going to make a technology change, I want to make sure that I can, staff up my team, because ultimately it's a people business. And what I got back from them was, even if you wanted to go to Ruby on Rails or Scala or some other technology, we won't be able to find enough developers. So with PHP, we were, the feedback that I got was we could find sufficient number of developers. So that actually influenced our decision to move in this direction. So I'm going to quickly show you a couple of things that we launched on the Zend 2 framework. This site went out about 10 days ago. It's our latest site. It's called Jim Knows Cars. It was built on the Zend 2 framework. And we've got a number of sites coming up soon. And this is very well received in the marketplace. Ford is doing a major push on this site. It's a female targeted automotive site. There are not many of them, and this is really done very well for us. And another one that's on Zend 2 framework is an infrastructure technology, what we call SmartRack, and it's built on Zend 2 framework. We actually, we not only distribute magazines, we also distribute the racks at Best Buy and Barnes & Noble and so on that hold the racks, hold the magazines. And what we're building is some intelligent rack technology that actually uses the kind of cloud-based infrastructure to monitor them and things like that. So that's built on this framework. So my new meaning of PHP is pretty happy programmers. I hope that works out. And one other thing before I leave you, we are in Southern California. It's warm. You can come to work in your shorts. And rumor has it that a bunch of good developers attend this conference, PHP developers. So if you think you want to make a switch, you got my email address. Thank you.
We have a few minutes left, and if anybody has any questions, we've got microphones up again. If anybody wants to ask about the transition they made or anything in particular, we have just a few minutes if people want to ask something. Anybody? Yep, okay. Run, run.
Hi there, folks. Whoa, you can hear me. Great. I was just going to ask a quick question from the perspective of single sign-on. What kind of strategic thinking did you have to go through, and what did you do to ensure you, I guess if you're trying to merge all of those different sites and the user data, you'll have a lot of research and information and all of them. How did you persist that through the transition?
So I'll take a shot, and then you have the same issue, actually. So for us, actually, it was single sign-on is a critical component of trying to get a 360 view of the customer. Oddly enough, we actually do a number of things in the media space. We sell magazines. We have websites. We have auto shows. We run about 23 auto shows nationwide. You might call it stupid, but we actually don't know if the guy who attended the auto show is buying our magazine and visiting our website. So we wanted to find out if it's the same guy who's going to all of these things. The only way to capture that information is if we start creating some sort of a profile, some sort of registration, getting the information, and then tying it to various things. And also, we didn't know whether the guy who visited Moto10 is the same guy who visited Hot Rod. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is start recommending information. We are building a big data recommendations engine. So if me as Raghu went to MotoTrain and I went to other sites, or if I know what types of content that I'm consuming, then I can personalize the site and so on. So the number of reasons why we wanted to find out more about the user, which is why we are doing single sign-on. In terms of technology, we had a kind of a runoff, and among different technologies, open source and otherwise, and we standardized on something called Giant Rain, which happens to be pretty popular and used by a number of different media companies as well. I think Brent has got single sign-on as well. Let him answer his.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything different to say about. Did that answer your question? Where did he come from?
You left the microphone too soon.
I guess one of the other things I was thinking about was potentially the challenges you might face with merging the user details, So I don't know if you've got any insights on that side of things, where, you may be able to.
Yes. Yeah, I think the bigger challenge was getting our business owners to agree on what a profile should be. Because if you want to have single sign-on, you don't want to say, oh, I'm going to go to this other site, and we need 3 other questions to tack onto it. So actually getting the business to agree was the hardest part. And then from the technology perspective, it was really just make a decision. Is this more recent than that, or does this take precedence over that? For us, it's live events, because people are typically most forthcoming with their information at live events, because they're going to be there in person, whereas the web, you have the veil of secrecy. So it wasn't too hard to really normalize across the separate databases for us. Yep.
Thanks.
Anyone else with a question? Excellent.
I think both of you mentioned using multiple technologies, Java, PHP. Can you speak to any challenges you faced integrating those technologies together?
Brent, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, well, our company is a holding company. It does a lot of acquisitions. It seems like every acquisition comes with its own set of technologies, servers, code, developers. And yeah, every single one of them is a challenge. But where we're going is service-based. Right? So what we're trying to do is really publish platform as a service, publish audience management as a service, publish content as a service. And so the biggest challenge is to say, how quickly can we create a service infrastructure and keep moving, keep the business happy while we're moving forward, and then any new acquisitions that come in or new technologies is how quickly can we basically put up a service layer in between them. So that's worked really well for us.
I think ditto for us. It's service-based. The only thing that we have changed is what used to be SOAP is now REST and using JSON to consume whatever's coming back from the service. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thanks everybody. And I was wrong, we did have a technological glitch, so we got to throw an elephant out. I'll have to get another one for the next one. You never know what might happen. And thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.